Thinking about getting one of these? You need to know the differences between a top and a mid cutting before you buy. Hey, Lee here, helping you become a better plant parent, and this is my Variegated Monstera albo. And usually, if you want to make more of this plant, you would just cut off the top. But because this is such a sought after houseplant, most sellers are actually cutting up every single leaf to get as much out of this plant as they can. If you're planning on buying a Variegated Monstera, you need to know what you're getting into. Depending on where you cut this plant, it will actually dictate the size and growth pattern of the next new leaf. I'll show you the various cutting types and you'll know what you're getting into depending on which part of the plant that you buy. Before I address the top and mid cutting, you might be curious to know what happens to your Monstera if you cut the stem all the way back to a stump. You probably won't come across this as a cutting type. Sellers usually leave a few leaves on when cutting their plants back, and sellers generally keep theirs to regrow a plant. But this is what happens when you cut a Monstera all the way back to a stump. I got pretty lucky and I am seeing growth from 2 points on this plant. Because it's much older, the stem and the roots had a lot of stored up energy, which helped it to grow and produce new leaves faster. The mid cutting can be a little bit misleading, and sellers should be really clear about what type of cutting it is and when it was cut. As you can see, the next leaf to come from a mid cutting is significantly smaller than the previous leaf. While getting a mid cutting is not always the wrong thing to do if you're getting a Variegated Monstera, you need to be aware that the next leaf may look absolutely nothing like the previous leaf. What you need to do is try to get a good image of the stem of that plant. Depending on what the stem looks like and where that next growth point comes from on that stem, that will be the best indicator on a mid cutting of what your next leaf will look like. Try to look for stems with a more balanced white and green. That way you can have a good balance of having more green, which will contribute to the overall health of your plant, and having that great white balanced variegation that you might be looking for in this style of Monstera. As I was saying, the important thing to know about mid cuttings is that the growth comes from a node. Now in this pot I actually have 2 mid cuttings, and as you can see, this leaf right here is the newest growth that came from this giant leaf. But there's 2 different mid cuttings in this pot, and I should have 2 different stems. So what I'm suspecting happened is that I've cut too close to the aerial roots on both sides, and I may not actually have another growth point. So basically what I have in this pot is 2 mid cuttings, one producing a new shoot, and one that is never going to produce a new shoot because there are no viable nodes left. It is producing roots inside the pot, which is keeping the leaves green and healthy, but over time, that energy will run out and the leaves will die off. If I get a close-up of this Monstera in Leca, you may be able to get a closer look of what I mean. A plant is producing healthy roots, but with no node to push out more growth, it'll just sit here until the leaves eventually die out. And now, the most sought after, the top cutting. In general, top cuttings are more valuable because the next leaf, if the conditions are good, will usually be the same size or larger than the previous leaf. The newest leaf will grow here, inside the petiole of the newest leaf. It will slowly poke its head out and unravel. In general, a top cutting is what you should be looking for when you're trying to purchase a Variegated Monstera. Getting a mid cutting is a viable option too, and it will actually help shave a few dollars off the price if you're looking to save a few bucks. Most sellers are upfront when they're selling a mid cutting and will usually include that in the description of the plant when you're about to make your purchase. If there's no information listed, it is fair to assume that it's a top cutting, but it never hurts to ask. Like the video and consider subscribing if this information has been helpful. I hope it helps you make a more informed decision when purchasing your first Monstera. See you next time.